Um, so going into some medical stuff, how to talk to your doctors and your symptoms. I haven't asked you about this before, but symptom side effects as symptoms, side effects from medications
Sure.
as symptoms. For example, I'll give you a couple examples. So, client has bipolar and takes Seroquel. So it's like the condition is bipolar, the symptom is psychosis, mood swings, whatever it is. But then Seroquel has these side effects that also act as symptoms, essentially.
It turns you into a zombie.
Yeah. So, and then another example would be like opioids. That's you can't really you can use that kind of stuff as a symptom. Um, if you have significant symptoms, or sorry, significant side effects, do you record that as if it's a symptom the exact same way on your application and on appeals and
Absolutely.
trouble concentrating,
That's a
pain,
great
brain
question.
fog,
It's a
drowsiness?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great question, and the answer is an emphatic yes. Yes, you absolutely report your symptoms from medication. The way Social Security looks at things is if it's prescribed, you're supposed to be taking it. And if you're taking it and you suffer side effects from it, then those side effects are part of your impairment. You brought up opioids. A lot of times, if you're on really stout stuff, Percocet, hydrocodone, all those really,
The
really
heavy
stout,
ones, yeah.
yeah, stout medications. There's like a message on the bottle, and probably your doctor has said, "I don't really want you operating any heavy equipment because you're going to get drowsy on that. You're going to get, if it's a really strong dose and you're, a small person, you're probably going to get loopy too. You're going to get, a little bit loopy. Could you work doing that? Is a boss going to be okay with you being loopy, drowsy, kind of nodding off at your desk? This boss isn't going to stand for that, and I don't think any other boss, across the nation would stand for that. So yeah, you definitely report those. Seroquel's a big one because it does. You're almost always prescribed to take that before bed, and there's a big reason for that because you're not going to be able to function if you take it in the morning. Your day, it really, really, the word calm is not the right word. It really kind of zombifies you. It's
like a tranquilizer.
It's not like Xanax tranquilizer. It's like turn you into a different person. If you're having psychosis, or you're in a psychotic episode, that's the kind of medication they will give you, some antipsychotic to not just calm you down, but basically, turn you into,
Yeah.
a big human pillow. You're just not going to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
So if you had to take that, that's something to absolutely report. If you are prescribed medication that just kind of makes you so drowsy that you have to take naps, that's really disabling. You're not allowed to take naps at work. I can't think of a job where you're allowed to take naps at work. And if it really knocked you out like that, you'd have a hard time, functioning. A lot of times we see, restrictions on driving. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery. Those have to be considered by Social Security, and they do. Especially the judges. The judges are really, really good in a hearing. If you've reported that you're on, I'm taking, oxycodone, 4 times a day, and my pain level is still at a 7 out of 10, and the judge will probably follow up immediately. Well, you have any side effects from taking that? Oh yeah, I'm loopy. It's like I can't focus. I'm drowsy, and they have to consider that. That's part of your impairment because you're being prescribed that. And if you're being prescribed something, Social Security expects that you have to take it. And therefore that side effect is an impairment. So great question. It's one of the reasons that we ask, if you're on medication when we're doing either intake interviews or later on down the road, if I'm prepping you for a hearing, what are you taking now? I know, back when you signed with us, 12 months ago, you were taking this. You still taking that? Yeah. You have any side effects from that? Oh, yeah. Okay, well, we're going to talk about that in the hearing, and I'll ask you about
Yep.
that, or the judge will ask you about that. Be prepared and make sure that you tell the judge about any kind of side effects that you have, because those are part of the impairments. So yeah, it's a great question, and it's I say this a lot, so I don't know if people are starting to believe me, because I don't say great things about Social Security very often. And in my podcast, I say that a lot. I don't say really nice things about Social Security very often. Well, in this case, Social Security, they realize that side effects from medication are impairments, and
Yeah.
therefore they do consider them, which is the right thing to do.
Yeah, probably another common one is like chemo drugs. You know, if you're taking like,
Yeah.
is there a pill version of chemo?
Sure.
Yeah, there's the pill form, and then if you're doing any kind of chemotherapy, brain fog, chronic fatigue, drowsiness, sickness, stomach issues. I hear that all the time.
We see folks with hepatitis or chronic liver disease, not so much cirrhosis, but hepatitis or chronic liver disease. They'll do this interferon treatment, and I don't know if it's actually classified as chemo, but it basically makes you feel like you're dead.
Yeah.
You know, is that part of your disability? Yes, it
Of course.
absolutely is.
Yeah.
You're going through some treatment like that, and chemo makes you sick all the time. You feel horrible. Radiation can make you sick also.
Yeah.
So cancer treatments, those kinds of things are definitely taken into account when adjudicators are looking at your case. And think about that. Let's say that you're one of the lucky people, and that is you caught a cancer early and you had it excised, you had it cut out if there was a tumor, and you did all that, and you're just out of work for like 3 or 4 months. But now they're going to start the chemo rounds, and they're going to do 12 rounds of chemo to make sure that any of the metastatic cells aren't growing and stuff like that. And so you're on chemo for the next 6 months, and then after that they're going to do some follow-up stuff. Well, the actual diagnosis impairment itself looks like it was taken care of months ago. But the problems you're having, from the treatment of that, they're just ongoing, and absolutely, if they last 12 months, that's disabling.
Yep. Yeah. On that same topic, and I know the answer to this, but what about the scenarios where a client is prescribed a medication and they just don't take it? They're non-compliant to their medication.
Yeah.
That's pretty devastating to their case, right?
Horribly devastating to their case, because there are 2 instances where Social Security will say you're unable to work, but they're not going to deem you disabled. Well, then how can that be? That doesn't make any sense. That's one of them. Failure to follow prescribed treatment, and not just medication.
Just treatment, yeah.
Let's say that, and I don't see this very often, but I have seen it. Let's say that your orthopedist is like, we've tried epidural steroid injections in their back, and we've tried, nerve burning, cauterize it, we've tried this, we've tried that. I'll send them some rigorous physical therapy. And, my client's like, I can't do that. And they don't do it. An adjudicator would say, okay, the prescribed treatment was for them to go to physical therapy, and they didn't go. Therefore, they might not be able to work, but I'm not going to find them disabled. And the other one is if alcohol or drugs are a contributing factor to your disability. Let's say that you have moderate depression, but you're drinking a 5th of whiskey a day. Okay, well, your moderate depression is now going into marked depression, because that's booze is a downer, and it's going to bring you even lower. And the judge could say, yeah, there's no way they can work. They're in a drunken stupor most of the day. They can't do that. But if they stop drinking, they wouldn't be disabled.
Yeah. Have you considered not drinking?
Yeah, I've seen it where they actually meet a listing, and one day we'll talk about the listings, but they meet the substance abuse listing. They will not be found disabled, because you can't. The law changed. I think it was '96. I was with disability when President Clinton signed that. you can't be found disabled if drug and or alcohol are the reason that you can't work.
Yeah.
If they're contributing to your disability. So.
And another common pair would be methamphetamine and some kind of psychosis, right? Because
Sure.
those go hand in hand.
Sure.
It's impossible for Social Security to differentiate which one's causing the other.
Yeah. The argument that I make when I do take a case and I look at the record and I've talked to my client and I'm like, yeah, they're using either drugs or alcohol, but you look at the timeline and they get the diagnosis of, bipolar, 5 years ago, and they really started drinking heavy 3 years ago. I'm probably going to take that case, whereas if, they've been drinking since they were a teenager and they get the diagnosis of bipolar or depression or something like that later on, it's really hard for me.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate which, what came first? And if I can identify in the case record, and I believe my client, that they're self-medicating, and that's why they're drinking. They're not depressed because they drink. They drink because they're depressed. If I can prove that,
Yeah.
we have a really good chance of winning the case.
If you can
and the
prove
argument
it,
I make is that, one, it's Social Security's burden to determine is the caboose pulling the engine or is the engine pulling the caboose.
Yeah.
It's their burden to figure that out. Now I will push them in the way that I think it should go, but it's like this. If I've taken the case, that I think that the engine is not pulling the caboose. The caboose is pulling the engine, and therefore he's not depressed because he's drinking.
Mm-hmm.
He's drinking because he's depressed, and depression came first. That's the primary thing. And if he stopped drinking, he'd still be depressed and still be disabled. That's the argument I would make. If I don't make that argument, it's usually because I didn't take the case.
Yeah.
If you're using, it's really, really, you make it really, really difficult on a representative to make a case. First of all, you're going to walk into a situation where Social Security, whoever's deciding your case, somebody at the lower level or a judge, you're walking in there and your credibility it's already shot because, okay, well, this person's, he's a meth addict, or this person's a drunk, or, and so you got to basically convince them that, yeah, I am a meth addict, but I'm telling you the truth. And this is the problem that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because of meth. It's because of this, and I just use meth. Or,
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to prove. And usually, like I said, if I've taken your case, I believe that, the right thing is happening.
There is a potential path to victory, but only if you tell the truth.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because I don't want people to get the wrong impression and say, oh, okay, so I just won't tell them that I'm drinking or I'm, still doing street drugs and everything.
Well,
no, don't lie.
That's right.
Do
And
not
we've talked
lie.
about this.
Please don't lie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've talked about this in other podcasts, and I will guarantee you, and I do this every once in a while, I'm doing it now, looking into the camera, I will guarantee you, you lie to me about drinking or drugs, I will find it in your case records. For some reason, people don't lie to their doctors or their therapists. And it'll be there for me to see and for anybody who's deciding the case at Social Security. Don't lie. You're going to be found out. Don't lie.
Yeah. Just to be crystal clear with that.
That's right.
We should have just named the podcast Don't Lie.
Don't Lie.
Don't lie to us.